Welcome to a new series where I get into various trivia and just interesting thoughts I have in general about a Pokemon evolution line. Today, we're going to start off with the Venusaur line. Now, don't worry, I'm not actually going to go through this series by just going in National Dex order or something like that. It'll generally just be whatever Pokemon I feel like talking about at the moment. But since I like Venusaur, I figured I might as well start with the earliest entry in the Pokédex. Now, this is the first in this series, so I may change my approach to this slowly over time based on feedback or how I'm feeling about it. With that, let's take a look at the OG grass starter. Real quick though, before we start, Luna's World. If you like chill lo-fi and need some music to relax to, Luna's World could be the place for you. I will leave the link for that in the description below. Now, let's get started. So, putting us back to the 90s, it's sometimes easy to forget that Venusaur was definitely not as popular as Charizard and Blastoise back in that day, especially in the West. There were a lot of reasons for this, since here, they never released a green version. It lacked the mascot status that the other two had. Some of you might even remember hearing about some mythical green version back when you were a kid from some other country, almost not even sounding real. The fact that a yellow version came out didn't help to make Venusaur feel like the third wheel among Westerners when it came to the original starters of the series. In Japan, this of course wasn't the case. The original versions were red and green, so Venusaur was immediately a mascot. Competitive Pokemon was also rapidly becoming a thing in Japan as early as 1997. And in Gen 1, Venusaur was the strongest starter by a decent enough margin, which went over the heads of a lot more casual players understandably, especially considering how flawed the poison secondary typing was, and the fact that it was still kind of out of place in the 1997 Nintendo Cup meta. But still, that's not to say that Venusaur ever rivaled the popularity of Charizard anywhere. I'm not even sure if it was the second favorite in Japan over Blastoise either. Maybe it is today, but in the 90s? Hard to say. It's definitely gotten more respect in the West over time for both its design and gameplay strengths, so I'd say its status is similar enough in both regions now among the current generations of fans. While the English name of this evolution line seems to imply it's basically some kind of dinosaur plant creature, the entire evolution is actually based on a frog. I don't think this is too obvious on its initial two forms though, but its final form Venusaur definitely shows more of this with the bumps on its body. It almost looks like the sort of creature you'd see summoned in Naruto or something. This is probably why Ken Sugimori dislikes drawing Venusaur, since it has a lot of little details on its body and isn't as easy to find fun poses for as Charizard. We can also see something similar with Akira Toriyama drawing Cell. On the previous subject of its popularity, I feel like in-game, there's something unintentionally added to what we already established, that being that it felt less popular than Blastoise and Charizard. If you don't pick Bulbasaur or Squirtle in Pokemon Red or Blue, you'll never see a Venusaur in your Pokédex at all. No NPC actually uses one in the game. You need to have it yourself, or choose Squirtle so your rival can eventually evolve their starters into a Venusaur. If you chose Charmander and don't do any trading, you won't even see the damn thing at all. Considering Charmander was the most popular choice, there are definitely some players that ended up not seeing it at all. Not exactly helping with its popularity status here in the West, considering its lack of mascot status. Though it did kind of make it feel more special and unique for us fans of Venusaur. You know what else may have not helped? The anime. The anime did give all three starters a great spotlight, and it helped Bulbasaur become the iconic Pokemon that it was at the time. But Ash's Bulbasaur never evolves. It's not even Ash's fault. It's not a lack of skill or bad training on his end. Brock even notes Ash has been doing a great job with it. It's just that Bulbasaur simply refuses to when given the chance in the Mysterious Garden episode. It's as if Bulbasaur is mashing the B button itself. By the way, if you are a fan of the anime and the way it handles its world building of Pokemon, that's a whole rabbit hole for this evolution line itself, at least for the Indigo League arc. In the episode Bulbasaur's Mysterious Garden, Nurse Joy tells the cast that at a certain time of year, a group of Bulbasaur go to a place simply called the Mysterious Garden to evolve. Some kind of festival, but that the time of the year is not consistent. Then she says it has something to do with the alignment of the planets and the surface of the moon. Am I the only person that thinks that last part is just insane for this evolution line? Maybe if it were related to Clefairy or Mount Moon, I could see it. But it's a pretty clear example of the early episodes of the anime being experimental, since the series was still very new back then when these episodes were written. It's still a cool concept, but it's so strange to see something involving the moon instead of, the sun? The thing that buffs Bulbasaur massively? I know that wasn't a concept in Gen 1, but its big attack is clearly supposed to be Solar Beam, which needs sunlight to be effective. To be honest though, this sort of lore could be cool for a regional variant or some adjacently related species as a grass fairy type or something. There's always gonna be little things in the anime that are a little weird, like Bulbasaur being able to use Whirlwind for some reason. But those early arcs are a treasure trove of weird ideas. Old Pokemon is certainly an aesthetic, regardless of the medium. That's not to say that the whole mysterious garden is a total plot hole for how the Bulbasaur line works. But if you're watching this in the 90s, you might think that's how Bulbasaur is canonically supposed to evolve or something. But there's no mention of anything even vaguely similar to this in any of the games. Thankfully, they don't outright state Bulbasaur needs to participate in this event to evolve. But they do kind of imply that it could be the case. It doesn't help that Ash's Bulbasaur doesn't evolve ever, even after this garden is an afterthought in the series canon. And maybe this next question is one I should ask myself for every one of these. What is the best version of this Pokemon? Specifically its final form, Venusaur. I'm thinking I like it in Gen 5 the most. I've mentioned it's one that I actually liked competitively, despite some people not liking the weather quirks and such. But a lot of Pokemon I just have favoritism for were really good, and that includes Venusaur. But casually, it's pretty solid in Gen 1 to be honest. Competitively, it's fallen down to NU on the Smogon singles format. But that's also kind of exciting, as it's a totally new meta now to explore where it has a chance to be strong there. And for playthroughs? I mean, you can't go wrong in Red, Blue, and Yellow or Fire Red and Leaf Green with this thing. Then there's its Mega Evolution in Gen 6. And I gotta say, it's a Pokemon that's generally just carried itself with dignity pretty consistently in spite of power creep. Obviously, I started this series with it because I like it a lot. Now, I ended up just kind of casually discussing whatever was on my mind. But my approach to this series could change a little bit over time. I'm not sure who's next, but again, it won't be in dex order. But what do you think? Where does Venusaur's evolution line rank for you in terms of grass types and starters? Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section below.